Hi everyone, I'm T and welcome to my first art video. I'm hoping to make a few of these throughout the year, showing you how I learn my art process and hopefully I will improve it. I also want to be able to chat to you about the things I learn outside of art that are sometimes tangential to the subject I'm painting, like a gentle double whammy of learning and really bad painting technique. Anyway, for this painting I wanted to practice my watercolor by painting a side-on portrait without using a visual reference. As you can see, I tried to use blocks and shapes to construct the portrait. I'll preface the video. As you can see, I'm already complaining. For the weird camera angling, the camera kept moving while filming, and sometimes you'll get a gross shot of my head. Really sorry about that. And I hope the next one is planned better than this one and set up better. Anyway, I decided to make a portrait of the ancient Greek goddess Athena. At the time I was painting this, I was watching a lot of Saint Seiya, which I used to watch in Spanish when I was a little kid back in the mid-80s. And this particular portrait isn't really fan art of Kidosauri, who is the titular reincarnated goddess in the anime, but I decided to take a small note from my main intention was to focus on the construction of strong features like her nose, her jaw, and her deep-set eyes, and put in a sweet noodle, a little snake, although I admit I constructed his head a bit too weirdly. It's a bit too rounded now that I look at it, and it's not angled very well. But anyway, the goddess Athena is one of the most well-known goddesses of the ancient Greek pantheon. She is mentioned quite a lot in Hesiod's Theogony and in particular Homer's Odyssey. She is a city goddess. Athens is obviously named after her. She's the goddess of wisdom, the arts and crafts, but also of war. But unlike her brother Ares, the actual god of war, she represents good counsel, tactics, strategy, just as much as she represents the elements of battle themselves. I do mention she's a city goddess, but counterparts like Demeter, Artemis, Aphrodite tend to be goddesses of natural elements like the moon, nature, and okay, love is a bit more abstract, but Aphrodite's a different bag of beans, and I'm not going to talk about her in this video. Athena's father, Zeus, gives birth to her without having been fertilized, so to speak. This is debatable if you're going to negotiate the mechanics of a myth. Zeus took the Titaness Metis, who is the Titan goddess of wisdom, and practical wisdom in particular, as a lover. So, I mean, what's new there? Gaia and Kronos actually warn him that in the same way that Zeus did to them, deposed them, Metis would produce a child that would do the same to him. So what does Zeus do? He swallows Metis, very much the way Kronos, Zeus's own father, swallowed Zeus's siblings back before the Titanomachy. Anyway, aside from all this weird symbolic swallowing, he develops a massive migraine and gets his son, Hephaestus, to cleave his head open with an axe, and by doing so, out comes Athena, fully dressed in armor and ready to go. Interestingly, it's debated that Athena may be a pre-Hellenic goddess who got redressed. She may have been a Minoan goddess whose name we may have lost, and a lot of her iconography was rejigged into the myth of Athena that we now know as daughter of Zeus. This is really fun stuff that I'm really into. It's analyzing the mythology of mythology. But anyway, her origins have other alternatives, one being from ancient Libya, where she's actually considered the daughter of Poseidon, and that's really, really interesting because mythology is not canonical in any way, and there will be always changes and different origins depending on where it came from, like in this example. Commonly, we know Athena as being a rival to Poseidon. This has been shown in the myth of the competition to name the city of Athens. Poseidon and Athena competed to be patron gods of the city and gave the city gifts to win their favor, so to speak. So Poseidon gave the city, according to certain variations, a natural spring for fresh water and or the first horse. Athena, in turn, gave them the olive tree, and the citizens obviously found the olive tree more useful and more beneficial to them, so they named the city after her, or so it goes, more or less. There's another connection, oddly enough, with the city of Athens with a different kind of origin myth, in that Athena's half-brother, Hephaestus, tried to assault her, and she fled from him and his advances, and by doing so his seed fell onto the ground and fertilized the earth, and from this he produced the child Erecthonius, who is described as either being a snake-like monster, or was half man, half snake, or was all man but still snaky. Anyway, Athena decides to adopt him, and he grows to become the first proper king of Athens. So that's really, really interesting. Likewise, Athena pitted herself against Poseidon, for example, by constantly putting herself on the side of Odysseus by helping him out and giving him advice and providing him with gifts. And this was despite Poseidon's own vigorous attempts to punish Odysseus and prevent him from getting home for his hubris, but also for killing Polyphemus, who was his own son. Athena also has the title Athea Tritonea, which can be associated with Poseidon, as this term Triton is usually associated with him. It also seems to be the name of a river, meaning that Athena was born in a river, but the word trito can also mean head. So there's lots of different ways of interpreting her origins. For a little girl like me, back when I was 6 or 7, learning about her in my first or second grade, she was really inspirational. Like with most Greek mythological characters, though, she was a typical classical Greek deity who cannot be assigned the same moral alignment that we would in the modern age. Like other gods, Athena is petty as all get out. One story, which is of possible Libyan origin, is that Athena grew up with a half-goddess Pallas, who was her childhood friend. They learned to do sport and combat together and were like sisters. One day, while practicing combat, Athena killed Pallas. Of course, there's different versions explaining her death. One is that Athena was losing the fight, so she landed a pot shot and cheated and killed Pallas by accident. Another is that Zeus was watching over them and got scared for his daughter, so he temporarily blinded Pallas, giving Athena an opportunity to accidentally land a fatal strike. Either way, Athena was grief-stricken by the loss of her friend and took her name, and so is occasionally titled as Pallas Athena. Of course, another version is that Pallas was actually a monstrous titan whom Athena defeated during the war, and one story shows that she skinned Pallas and wore his skin as a cloak. Anyway, there's the story of Arachne, which, depending on the version you read, is still the poor young lady dying for her hubris and thinking she could weave better than Athena. One version has Athena being so furious she somehow drives Arachne to suicide by hanging herself using the wool she used for weaving, which is super grim. Another is that Athena is the one who hangs Arachne herself. Suddenly, in a flash of guilt, Athena saves Arachne and turns her into a spider, and so the story goes. Another act of pettiness is the often discussed monsterification of Medusa. Depending on one source, Athena is either punishing Medusa for having an illicit affair with Poseidon inside Athena's temple. Again, this is a myth, so there's no canon per se, so it may have been a consensual or non-consensual relationship. Either way, it was, a form of blasphemy. And so Athena either protects Medusa by turning her into a monster or punishes her by doing so. Again, the Gorgon myth is complex. Interestingly, a lot of the iconography of the way Athena dresses is that she also has a Gorgon's head on her breastplate. This could be just aesthetic or an association with the Medusa myth, or it's an association with Gorgons generally, because it's been found that Gorgons are very old symbols of protection, likely coming from Minoan culture. The snake in particular has a very important role in Minoan culture and religion, and the Gorgon symbol is probably associated with that. Athena's always somehow been associated with snakes, and so I think the evolution of all this symbology is based on some relation with Athena as having been a pre-Hellenic Minoan goddess and having snakes as part of her symbolism. Anyway, I'm not here to go into a super in-depth analysis of mythology and its origins, let alone about Athena, because there's so much to learn about this one character with multiple interpretations. I think it would make this video 5 hours long. She captured my imagination as a little girl wanting a role model who was both capable, powerful, and respected. So I thought I'd paint her in this little lesson of watercolors, just as I used to do in workbook doodles when I was a kid. I even dressed up a Barbie up in tin foil for armor and turned her into Athena for a school project. Anyway, as you can see, there's a lot of improvement to be done here. As the painting takes more dimension, her deep-set eyes turn into overly large ones, and the iris is not well positioned. The more I look at it, I note that maybe the helmet has shrunk her skull and her jaw is far too high, I think. I have, as usual, overworked the painting, something I struggle with watercolors generally since I treat them all like oil or acrylics, and then there's my poor attempt at giving the helmet a metallic effect, and I'm shading stuff willy-nilly on most of the thing. Anyway, I hope you had a lovely watch enjoying this. Please subscribe or comment or like. I'm going to try and upload the next video within the next month, as I'm still trying to learn how to video edit. As I get better, I hope on working on other mediums and do a variety of other subjects for practice. So there we have it, my first filmed watercolor practice, with some facts thrown in for good measure. Thanks for watching. I hope we've all learned something nice today. In my case, I know there's a lot more to learn. Bye!